and welcome to the Blindfold Chess Podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode. As per tradition, we will be looking at some puzzles this week. I will give you the location of each of the pieces on the board, then I will give you some time to solve it before we walk through the solution. We have 3 puzzles this week: easy, medium, and hard. Try your best to solve the puzzle before the solution begins. Let's dive in. Puzzle number 1. It is white to move, and you are playing white. White has a knight on e7. White has a king on h6. White has a rook on g1. Black has a bishop on c5. Black has a rook on e5. Black has a king on h8. So again, white has a knight on e7, a king on h6, and a rook on g1. Black has a bishop on c5, a rook on e5, and a king on h8. I will give you a couple of seconds, and then we will walk through the solution. Solution.
1. Rook g8 check. Bishop captures g8. 2. Knight g6 checkmate.
Kind of cute, right? This is one of the rare circumstances where white can checkmate with only a knight on the board. Based on the 2 king positions, black is stuck in a type of smothered mate by being stuck in the corner. So good job, and let's move on to puzzle number 2. It is white to play. White has a rook on a6. White has a king on f3. Black has a pawn on a2. Black has a rook on a1. And black has a king on b4. Again, white has a rook on a6 and a king on f3. Black has a pawn on a2, a rook on a1, and a king on b4. I will give you a couple of seconds, and then we will walk through the solution. Solution.
1. King g2. King b5. 2. Rook a8. King b4. 3. Rook a7. King b3. 4. Rook b7 check. King c2. 5. Rook a7. King b2. 6. Rook b7 check. King c2. 7. Rook a7. The game is drawn.
This is a vital endgame to understand when you are down a rook pawn in a rook and pawn ending where the pawn is on the 7th rank. There are 2 parts to this: the king's job and the rook's job. For the king, it may seem counterintuitive to move the king away from the pawn, but by placing the king on g2 and h2, you are preventing black from being able to use the rook to get around the pawn. For example, if white were to instead try to chase down the pawn with like king to e2, king to d2, black can play rook from a1 over to h1. White would then capture the pawn on a2. Then black would play rook to h2 check. The king would move to the first rank, like king to d1. Then black would play rook captures on a2, and black would be up a rook. The second element of this is the white rook. The white rook's job is to tie down the black rook to the a1 square, and once the black king comes over to assist by playing like king to b3, white needs to check him away. The general idea is the moment the black king touches the pawn, you need to check them away. If the black king is not touching the pawn, the white rook just needs to stay on the a file and shuffle back and forth. So for example, if the black king is on c3, your rook needs to be on the a file. If the black king moves over to b3, you need to check them away by playing rook to b8 check. If the black king is further away, then you can just put in waiting moves like rook to a8, rook to a7, rook to a8, until the black king is touching the pawn. Then the rook needs to move over to the b file for check. All right, on to puzzle 3. This is another important rook and pawn ending that comes up a surprisingly high number of times. White has a king on b8. White has a pawn on b7. White has a rook on c1. Black has a rook on a2. Black has a king on d8. Again, white has a king on b8. White has a pawn on b7 and a rook on c1. Black has a rook on a2 and a king on d8. It is white to move, and I will give you a couple of seconds, and then we will walk through the solution. Solution.
1. Rook d1 check. King e7. Two, rook d4. Rook a1. Three, king c7. Rook c1 check. 4. King b6. Rook b1 check. 5. King c6. Rook c1 check. 6. King b5. Rook b1 check. 7. Rook b4. Rook captures b4 check. 8. King captures b4. King d7. Nine. Pawn to b8 promote to queen. White is winning.
This position is called the Lucena position. The objective is to cut off the opposing king by at least one file, and then by building a bridge between the white rook and the white king in order to provide enough coverage in order to promote white's pawn. By moving the rook up to the 4th rank, the white king is able to step out from behind the pawn and slowly move up the board with each check that the black rook provides. Once the white king reaches the middle of the board and black checks the king, white can then swing the rook over and block the black rook from attacking the pawn, as well as keeping the black king far enough away that they cannot reach the pawn that is on the 7th rank. If all those pieces are in place, white can then promote the pawn and they will win the game. I definitely totally have never messed this up over the board ever. Don't look at my games. Just trust me on that one. So those are the 3 puzzles that we have for this week. I hope you did well, and I hoped you learned something. Feel free to tune in next time, where we will continue to work on our blindfold skills and look at another game of the Masters.